and a minute. Well, good evening once again, and good to see that we have a good attendance already today, and all of you are staying safe in these trying times. It's indeed difficult to plan anything in these uncertain times, be it our official or personal engagements, leave alone KMA programs. Thanks to the online platforms available, we all have been pulling on in these new normal situations, and KMA too has been innovating for the past 10 months. We had our inaugural event last month on the Zoom platform itself with none other than the top executive of our state, the Chief Secretary, coming in to set the tone. And we also saw the Chairman of Life Insurance Corporation of India, Mr. M.R. Kumar, addressing us and receiving the top recognition from Kerala Management Association, the Management Leadership Award 2020 on the same day. Thereafter, we have had three leader talk sessions with eminent leaders like Mr. Naresh Kumar Pinisetti, Dr. Santosh Ranganekar, and Dr. Shivarama Prasad. One panel discussion with our in-house experts and other industry stalwarts on the statutory updates for business in COVID times, as well as a startup conversation series that we launched this year called the StartCon panel discussion with Mr. Sujit Bhaskaran and Ms. Fauzi Nissam. Many of you have been present in those programs. And we also have seen the new revamped and recreated KMA News magazine that was released during the first month itself. And the reception to the same too has been very encouraging so far. Hope all of you have received the physical hard copy and like the quality of contents and the look and feel of the magazine released now. Today we have yet another new initiative being launched this year, a series of programs organized by the KMA Women Managers Forum. During the inaugural event and thereafter in the KMA News magazine, I had explained about the new theme of this KMA year, spearheading responsible management. The theme emphasizes much on the importance and relevance of gender parity and diversity in any professional organization, and this is one of the vital ingredients of responsible management. World over, there is a hue and cry over the need for inclusion and also making gender diversity a statutory norm in governments and non-governmental organizations and even in the corporate boardrooms. While all are talking in unison about the need for gender equality, when it comes to growth path professionally and personally, is it really happening? Barring maybe a few exceptions like an Indra Nui or a Kiran Mazumdar or a Sunita or Preeta Reddy or our own Shalini Warrior, how many women have really made it to the top league to be reckoned with? Even after having a kind of gender unbiased performing workforce at the junior and the middle levels, why is it that when it comes to the top of the pyramid, the colors are fading out? And we do not find many leaders from the opposite sex making it to the top echelons. Opposite to me, I meant. Is there a perceived or an invisible glass ceiling up to which only the gender equality and diversity are seen to be holding true? This is the issue that we are discussing today in the first event being put together by the KMA Women Managers or the Women Leaders Forum. Glass ceiling for women leaders, myth or a reality? Our managing committee member, Madam Shalini Warrior, has conceived this program with much insight, and she has arranged such celebrated panelists and an outstanding moderator, and we all look forward to a very meaningful deliberation here today. Let me, on behalf of the entire managing committee of KMA, and on behalf of all of us present here in this Zoom platform, as well as on the YouTube and Facebook social media platforms, welcome the moderator for the program, Ms. Sneha Koshi of NDTV 24/7, and the panelists, Ms. Rekha Jayakrishan of Ernst & Young, Ms. Madhavi Lal of Deutsche Bank AG, Ms. Nandini Sarkar of the Boeing Company, and Mr. Vijay Kamath of Mondelez International to this online panel discussion. I also welcome, as a matter of protocol, Ms. Shalini Warrior, Ms. Shalini James, and the other members of the Women Managers Forum. All members of the Managing Committee are present here respected past presidents who are there in large numbers, members of KMA, members of other local management associations. I can see some of them here, student members, members from the media, and all invited guests to this first panel discussion event of the KMA Women Managers Forum. Let us get on with the proceedings and to introduce the panel and the moderator to you, may now request Ms. Shalini Warrior, our managing committee member, who's in charge of the Leaders Forum, to start the proceedings. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Madhav, for those kind words. A good evening to everybody. It is indeed an honor and a privilege for me to be here today and to introduce the moderator and the panelists. In the interest of time, I'm going to keep this really short so that we can get along with the discussions, but let me say a few words about all of them. Our moderator for today needs no introduction if anybody has been watching NDTV like I have been. Sneha Koshi is the deputy editor for NDTV 24/7 for the South, does a lot of stories out of Trivandrum and has been with this channel for the last 10 years. Passionate about gender diversity, she's got a lot of personal anecdotes that she can relate to in this journey to break the so-called glass ceiling. Welcome, Sneha, and thank you very much for your presence here. We've got 4 panelists that we've put together for the session, and they've come from diverse backgrounds and diverse industries. In no particular order, I'll start with Madhvi. Madhvi is somebody I know personally, have gone back a long way, is currently the head of HR, managing director and head of HR at Deutsche Bank since May of 2015. She's got 30 years of work experience in human resources across multiple organizations, some of which are Accenture, Standard Chartered Bank, ABN AMRO Bank, Colgate-Palmolive, HCL, Hewlett, and many more to go. She's been conferred the Women Leadership Award by the jury and the council of the board members of the Institute of Public Enterprises, BFSI, in 2010. And she was also awarded the Distinguished Alumnus Award by XLRI, her alma mater, in 2016. Madhavi works very extensively with CII, Confederation of Indian Industries, Indian Women Network, and is currently the chairperson for the Western region. Welcome, Madhavi, and great to have you on the panel. Rekha is based out of Bangalore, handles strategic transformations and initiatives for EY Global Delivery Service. EY Global Delivery Service is the global delivery arm of Ernst & Young and has a presence across 6 countries. It provides services to a wide range of EY clients across the world. Her specific responsibilities include mergers and acquisitions, divestitures, outsourcing, and several organization-wide initiatives across all countries. And so she's seen a wide spectrum of countries and not just India. She's also handled leadership roles in tax, assurance, and consulting service lines. Thank you very much, Rekha, and welcome to the panel. Vijay Kamath, not just a member of the male fraternity representing the male fraternity on the panel, but also brings with himself a huge amount of experience in FMCG. Currently in Chicago, I hate to ask Vijay what time of the day it is for him. We should just assume it's, he's bright and early and ready to contribute to the panel. So special thanks to you, Vijay, for coming so early in the morning. Various roles in Mondelez. For those of you not familiar with Mondelez, you'll be able to relate to Cadbury, I'm sure, or Oreo, brands that are very popular. And Mondelez is the official name of the company that makes those brands. Huge amount of experience across various industries, but primarily in the FMCG space. So thank you, Vijay, for bringing in that FMCG perspective and the male perspective onto this panel discussion. Last but definitely not the least, Nandini. Nandini is, got 2 decades of experience in HR. And she's actually a culture curator and an inclusion strategist. That's her wide range of experience across industries. She actually did her law. Having said that, with her passion for diversity and inclusion, she's moved away from just practicing law into being in the space of D&I, currently with Boeing in Bangalore. Some achievements to her name. She's got the Women's Super Achiever Award. She's recognized as one of the top 100 global D&I leaders, Asia's most innovative D&I leader, just to name some of the few, awards and accolades to her name. She's got a range of certifications and accreditations and is extensively seen in the public domain space talking about diversity from a manufacturing perspective and broadly from what it means for women in the workforce. So, Nandini, thank you very much for being here. The session has been curated around the theme, as Madhav said, of this whole concept of glass ceiling and is it a myth or a reality? What is it that women should do? And what is it that men should do to help women, advance in the workplace? I'm really excited and delighted that we've crossed the 200 mark in terms of number of participants in the program. I'm especially indebted to Madhav, Nirmala, and the entire managing committee members, past presidents, all of whom are here in full strength. Thank you very much for your presence. Means a lot to us. On that note, I would hand it over to Sneha to start the proceedings. Sneha, over to you.
Thank you so much, Shalini, and very good evening to everyone who has joined us. Thank you for taking out the time. Whether there is a glass ceiling or not, that's not even a question to ask, because the moment we talk about any sphere, any sector globally, there's some form of glass ceiling that women have had to face right at the outset. If you look at the kind of women who are joining at the bottom of the pyramid and the kind of women that you see right on top, it's extremely evident. Just to look into statistics, before we get into examples, if you look at the Fortune 500 companies, according to a 2018 survey which was done, just 4 to 5% women are actually heading the companies at the top, and it's only 25% of women who are at executive and senior level positions. And according to a 2018 survey done by which was quoted by BBC, it's around 12% of women who are running companies at the top, when actually if you look at the base, it's 1 in 4 women who are in managerial positions. So where are the women going? If there are 1 in 4 people who are women who are at managerial positions, then why is it only 12% right at the top when it comes to running the companies? Now, just to have these statistics at the backdrop for people who may not be familiar with, people from all backgrounds, hopefully who are listening to us today, the whole point really of having this survey, and I would think would be a success, if each of us try and take away something that we can identify as an invisible or a visible barrier around the workplace that we are working. And if it could be triggered enough to just challenge that setup in any form, I think it would be a success for all of us. With that, let's just take the question directly to our panelists who come from various sectors. What is it really that you see with the years of experience that you've had in this industry? What's the extent of a glass ceiling that you have been seeing? Madhuri, let's start with you. I'm told perhaps that financial sector is perhaps one of the better off sectors.
Okay. No, thanks, Neha. And thanks so much for having me here. Shalini, I've known Shalini for many, many years. And I have to tell you the story. I joined Standard Chartered Bank and I was told that, you're going to meet this this managing director level lady, Shalini Warrior. So I went to meet her. And I thought there'll be this gray-haired woman, and then I realized that she's as old as me and she has reached that level. So Shalini, you've been a, sort of role model for many, many people. So thank you so much for having me here. Sneha, I totally agree with you. There is a glass ceiling, but like every answer, it's not a simple answer, like there is a glass ceiling or there isn't. There is a glass ceiling, definitely, I think. And I'd like to sort of hear from anybody else who thinks differently. And I think Madhav mentioned, as you start the entering to the workforce, you get like 40% diversity, 30% diversity. But as you move up in the hierarchy, and you look at senior managers or board level, they're hardly 12% or 13% women in that pool. And I think my personal opinion is that this problem is actually created over centuries. Somewhere as we evolved as a society, women sort of got relegated to roles, looking after the house, and men became the breadwinner. So that sort of disparity started many, many years ago, many centuries ago, and we are really trying to correct that, over time, really. So I would say The first reason is that women have the option to opt out, and society does not frown on you if you opt out of a career. So that is one. Second is companies need to start sort of to be more inclusive, and we'll talk a little bit about that, as we go through the discussion, really. But yes, there is a glass ceiling, but there's a context to that, really. And I think one of the points, Neha, I wanted to make, because we are talking in this time of the pandemic, I was recently reading a survey that said that historically, whenever there's been like a pandemic or something which is, a global kind of phenomenon, women have been negatively impacted. And the expectation is this COVID situation, this COVID pandemic will proportionately impact women at the workplace. And that is why these discussions are important, that because we need to be cognizant of the fact that women will get impacted, and all the work that we've done in the last 2 or 3 decades will get sort of wiped out. So we need to be aware, and organizations need to start to do things more aggressively in the coming years to make sure that we continue to drive that diversity and inclusion.
Absolutely. I think this whole pandemic has brought about such a change in the work environment, with companies now looking at work from home for a long-term basis, literally changing strategies. So how they deal with that definitely being one important way. Rekha, let me get you in at this point. Rekha, Madhvi left it at the point where pandemic really has brought in several challenges, and we have to discuss that in detail. But what do you have to say about how you have been viewing this glass ceiling in EY, sorry?
So let me start by saying that when I have faced workplace challenges, I've never really thought about it in terms of a glass ceiling or from a gender lens. When I was invited to be part of this panel, that's when I started looking at my own career experiences in a different light. And I do agree that there does exist a glass ceiling. But again, in my definition, glass ceiling is slightly beyond all of the challenges that you find at the workplace. It could obviously your workplace policies, the culture in your organization, and generally the attitude of the colleagues and your peers, that does play a big role in putting the barriers for a woman to grow. But there are other subtle elements as well, and that goes beyond your workplace. As Madhvi mentioned earlier, the centuries of conditioning that has caused society to look at women in a different light, especially women with children. Society is more harsh when it comes to women who leave children at home and then go to work. Personally, I've had a lot of experiences where people ask me, how does your child cope? And this is as recent as last year when my son is 16 years old. I was on a project which took me to, to another country on many occasions. And my first reaction was to be defensive. And I did feel a pang of guilt as well. So I was surprised at my own reaction, and I realized how deep rooted some of these feelings are. The third element is really, the family pressures. And if you don't have a supportive spouse, or you're in an extended family and you don't get enough support from there, it becomes a big issue as well. And the fourth, and I would say, but definitely not the least element here is, the self-limiting beliefs that a woman holds. Can I do this? If I get an assignment, I raise my hands for it. Will I make it successful, or would I make it fail? Those kind of concerns. So I think at different stages, almost all women at the workforce would have experienced this in some proportion, and all of this put together, in my mind, would create this glass ceiling.
Thank you. Nandini, if I could just take you up on this. Glass ceiling, glass ladder, there's so many terms now which are out. Would you, as somebody who's leading an organization, influencing people, what would you tell women, when you're facing these challenges? Is it important to be aware of it? Were you aware of it in your journey, and women whom you're seeing around you?
Well, thank you for that question. And I'll try and tackle that in 2 ways. So in a world, as we see, which is essentially inclusive, because inclusion is the talk of the town now, it's the buzz, right? We see 4 to 5 generations at work. We see 3 colors at work, the pink, the blue, and the white. We see genders at work beyond the binary, because we are talking about gender fluidity as well. We also see different styles of working. And there is a healthy amalgamation of culture, because we are all now global companies mostly. We think global but act local. Now, in that light, when we are essentially inclusive, what incomprehensibly strong or bulletproof is this glass which makes the ceiling, is my first question. And I bring it here so that we are thinking together as we wade through this maze, I would say. So the second point here is the debate over the glass ceiling truly anachronistic in such a workplace environment? That's another question here for us to delve into. And I would also point towards another aspect, that what it was, because this phrase, if you see, came in the year 1986 in a Wall Street journal. That's when this glass ceiling thing came. But a lot has changed after that. Not more, but a lot has changed. We have to agree and accept that. Now, there is one of American author, a social activist as well, named Marianne Williamson. And I would love to quote her here to see the glass ceiling in true light from an organizational ecosystem perspective to that of we as an individual taking charge of our choice and our career. You know, because we just heard Rekha mention that she didn't even think of her career as a woman. Similarly, me, I never thought of that as a glass ceiling. I took it as a barrier that was coming on my way to, you know, in the journey of professionalism, and then kind of warded off one by one. So Marian says, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates us. So it stands so true in the current milieu. How do we look at the ecosystem and how do we look inside us to make that synergistic movement towards breaking the glass ceiling? Because it is not so strong or bulletproof that it can't be broken.
Thanks, Chandani. Vijay, would like to get you in here. I'm coming to you last among these panelists, but you are a very, very critical, crucial voice here. How do you see this entire thing? You know, what's the kind of experience? Were you aware of this in your journey, or was it women who helped you understand the situation better, or was it both ways? What's your experience on this?
First of all, glad to be here, and it's absolutely fantastic to at least voice my opinion and my experience in this forum. Right. First of all, I have to say I am probably an outlier, because my experiences have been very different from what the statistics tell us, right? You quoted, and the latest figures in Fortune 500, 8% are led by women. So if you look at the numbers, there is definitely a glass ceiling, no doubt about it. My experiences have been very different. And that takes me back to what Rekha and Madhvi have also mentioned, saying, a lot of this glass ceiling numbers that we see, or glass ceiling in terms of numbers that we see, is in the context of the pressures and the expectations put by society. Getting that changed is going to take probably a couple of generations more. What I'm happy about is people of my generation, my friends and my colleagues, there are absolutely no considerations that I've come across that a woman cannot do whatever or something else. And this is based on the 3 companies that I worked for. I know that that's not the norm, but that's encouraging. The company that I work for today, Mondelez, has been led by a woman, Irene Rosenfeld. She led it for 8 years, ever since the company was formed, and she was instrumental in forming it. So there are examples that we can look to, which basically proves that, you know, women can be as successful, if not more successful than the men. I think the bigger part that we need to play is people of my gender. We need to look at what is the society norms that we are perpetuating, which we should consciously get away from. If I take a simple example, if you look at just my own friends, people who are dual career couples, the number of times that the women have stepped back and allowed the man to lead the career is way too overwhelming even today. So it is not so much, in my view, that the companies are placing that glass ceiling. It is choices that we make that probably enables it to persist. And it's up to us, the male fraternity, to relook at the decisions that we are making, consciously or unconsciously, which allows this glass ceiling to persist.
Thank you so much, Vijay. In fact, from all the responses that we've got in the first round, the next question perhaps is very natural. You know, when you go as a journalist, our primary job is to keep our eyes, ears, feet on the ground. And when you travel across, especially beyond metros, into hinterlands, some of the most powerful experiences for me have been behind the scenes when there have been women, children come up and ask me all kinds of questions. I've had school-going girls come up and ask me, how did you decide to become a journalist? There are girls, young girls who ask me, are you married? How does your husband handle it when you travel? There are mothers, there are wives inside the house who ask me these questions, and I'm sure I'm not an exception. If we go beyond our zones and even within our zones, you know, these are questions that we are forever asked. And as all of you have pointed out, so my next question really is, in terms of role models and mentors, do we have enough mentors? Do women, because at the base of the pyramid, you have enough men and women. But is the social conditioning, is the environment just a platform more probable for a man to rise in terms of mentoring and have access to mentors and role models than a woman would? Rekha?
Sorry, I had a little bit of trouble unmuting myself. I think there is a part of me that resents the insinuation that women need more role models and mentors. But having said that, it is a fact. When we look at the levels, the ranks, the positions above us, which are mostly played by men, so not surprisingly, and then you realize that they're working 24/7, almost working over weekends. For women, work-life balance is very critical. So if I have to raise my hand for the next level and I see my supervisor or my boss or whoever it is who's playing that role, working all kind of crazy hours, not having a balanced life, I wonder whether I should even raise my hands for that. And that's where a role model plays a big role. If and that's a responsibility I have as well. So when people who are reporting into me look up to me, it's my responsibility to show them how differently we can play the role, how we can bring in a lot more balance, be a lot more efficient, and create some time for yourselves. So from that perspective, having a role model is important. Mentor, absolutely yes. That mentoring, in our organization, we had mentoring programs for years. We even have experimented with reverse mentoring program where millennials were assigned the mentor roles and they were playing that mentor position for senior leadership. So, just trying to bridge the gap of the generational diversity. And this is
how did that work, Rekha? How did that work? What were the results like?
It actually worked, and it was done as an experiment. It was a fun experiment because we don't realize we're so set in the way we think and operate, and sometimes you just don't understand how a millennial thinks and what their requirements are. Some of our workplace policies are so aligned or attuned to our generation, And it's important to get their inputs and make those changes. So it's been a really good experiment to actually have been a part of.
Nandini, to what Rekha has been saying, and there's an interesting comment which is there in one of her chat groups, and let me just bring that up here. Nandini says we'll do it in a way and we'll ensure that there is balance, and there's not just one way of doing it. There's another interpretation that often comes to that, and that is, don't women want privileges of being women? And that is something which really needs to be dealt with in every organization. To handle things in a career in the best possible manner, in an efficient manner, is not wanting something as a woman. It should be just a human endeavor.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's where we are doing a lot of conversations within the organization, and also wherever I get an opportunity to impact, especially the student population of our society, to think differently. Because what we see is, so I'll give you 2-3 examples here to explain myself better. I was in a conversation with one of the marketplace consultants with respect to developing women in leadership, specifically in boards and C-suite. And then the Companies Act amendment came up where they said, every public listed company need to have one woman as part of the board. Now, we know that, family-owned businesses, and especially India-based businesses, were having family members who are women as part of the board. And most of the time, it was just a signing off saying that, yeah, they were present, but they did not have the voice that was required at the table. So the marketplace consultant was in a debate with me saying that, then they should not sign up to be a board member. And if they sign up, they need to have a voice. So the thing is, we at the organization level or at a marketplace consulting level are external to the environment that a woman as an individual is part of within the family and the social construct. We need to have the mindset change from there in order to build a society which thinks inclusively, where equity is key, not equality. Because if we do equality, we don't have a level playing field yet. We have to have equitable approaches to create that level playing field. So in order to create that level playing field, we need to start very young, when the minds of the young citizens of tomorrow are being led. I'll give you another example from my family. I know a relative who studied lots. But at the end of the day, she goes and marries a groom of her parents' choice. And when I asked, is this what you wanted to do? Because you have a technical qualification. The answer I get from her is, I studied because my parents wanted me to study. And now I have got a better groom. I think I'll be settled and feel fine about it. So there is no enough aspiration or ambition in the mind of women to be there. Because we are already in self-doubt, we are always looking for validations. So these are the conversations which we are having at workplace today, because we do not want the women to play the diversity card. And I also say, do not play the dreaded drama triangle where you play a victim card, that I'm victim of this. It's not that. There's a different way of looking at it and tackling it.
Thanks, Nandini. In fact, Madhuri, if I could ask you this. Now, Nandini spoke about how women themselves can be very challenged with aspirations, but even for women who are very aspirational, who are very ambitious, are we very self-restricting? Do we not negotiate? Does that not come naturally to us? Are women on the back front when it comes to networking, negotiation? Would they still want men to lead, according to a Forbes survey that came up? How do you see this, Madhvi?
So I was just listening with a lot of interest to what Rekha and Nandini said, and so I personally think that women who've entered the workplace and there are enough women who are ambitious to get to the top. So I won't talk about women who don't want to, go that extra mile or whatever, or who may not be that ambitious, but there are enough ambitious women who lose out because I think to my mind, what I see women sort of, there's a lot of self-doubt. There's lack of confidence that, we can do it. There's also this whole bit about, who will manage the rest of the work that I have to do. So I see those as the setbacks, really. I don't see anything else. I think it's more about, can I do it because I have so many other things to do? And the confidence that I can get to that, that next level, or sort of, make my ambition happen, really, And I think, I just was thinking, as Rekha was talking about role models, I think we need more role models among women, because simply there aren't enough women that girls can look up and say, here, this is where I want to reach. I mean, I talk about 30 years back when I started my career, women were not allowed in the army. It's true. Women were not allowed to be in the armed forces. I mean, and I do remember I kind of called the center when I was in the 12th or
SSB
to say, I called them. I said, why don't you have women? And they had like, there are no answers. It's not allowed, whatever. And I was like, really? I said, what is this? And therefore, I think the role modeling is really, really important. I'll give you another example, and that might sort of help. Again, it's not 30 years, it's not long back when I was in campus and I applied for a role, in a company. So they had the assessment center. I cleared that. And finally, there were 8 of us who made it to the final interview. There were 3 women and 5 men, and 3 men got the job. So I went and I asked the interviewer, I said, like, what did I do wrong? Can I learn? I was a kid at that time, right? And he said, nothing, you were very good, but we up this position is in a factory. We can't take women in the factory. So I think that these things did happen not so far back. And I'm sure there are parts of the, the industry where women are still not given the equal opportunity. So to my mind, I think organizations have to do something and women also have to do something. So I think somewhere the middle, then, you meet in the midway kind of thing.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, from what you were mentioning about 30 years ago, where they were not allowed in the army, to now then even, flying Dornier aircraft for that matter at the front line. But,
yes.
There's still a handful. They're not out there.
They're not enough. Yes, they're not enough. Yes.
Yeah. Vijay, are organizations open to talking about these things? Are these conversations out there at the forefront for men and women to talk about? Is this seen as career-oriented men and women's conversations?
Again, my experience is limited, and I'm fortunate that I worked in companies where this is actually an active conversation that happens on an ongoing basis. Be it, I'll give you an example. I was leading, when I was in Procter & Gamble in India, I was leading the gender diversity initiative, especially within supply chain. Back to the point about the comment which was made earlier, where Madhvi mentioned that, in manufacturing, we cannot take women. That's the barrier that we were out to break. And this, I'm talking this way back in 2006, 14 years ago. And our ambition was that the pool of people that we were recruiting from, it was 12% women who were interested in a supply chain role, right? That's the pool that we were recruiting from, Procter & Gamble. Our ambition was our intake in Procter & Gamble every year should be 50% women. And we did that. But we had to think through what will help retain the talent, because it's not just enough to acquire the talent. The bigger struggle is retaining and helping them grow, right? So we had a few women who were successful within supply chain, giving us inputs on what do we do. And I was leading this whole thing, and examples that we came across. We have factories in Baddi. We had factories in the middle of nowhere, basically, in Baddi. Biggest recognition was putting one woman there in the factory from the crop of new recruits is design for failure. So we went and made a commitment that if we put women in factories, it should be at least 4 of them together with a support system that enables them to succeed. Because the whole point of gender diversity within an organization is that it doesn't happen overnight. It has to be nurtured with the right inputs for these women to succeed. And sending one woman to a factory in the middle of nowhere, where she is probably the only woman in her shift, is absolutely the wrong thing to do. So these are things which, as a company, there are enough companies doing active steps to encourage the career for women to grow. But I also recognize that this is not yet the norm, right? We can feel good about it in multinational companies who are doing this on an active basis, but majority of the employers in India, for example, are the homegrown companies where I still believe the parochial thinking of what's the woman's role is still up for discussion today, right? So yes, answer is the multinational companies that I've been exposed to, absolutely, it's an active conversation. And it is something which is taken extremely seriously with measures, etc., for success. But is that the norm? I don't think so.
Just to quickly take on with what Vijay is saying, Rekha, maybe you can come in here. He said he spoke about a very strategic shift about how the decision had to be taken to retain women in those roles, in the supply chain roles. And so there was a shift. So there was expense involved. There were certain infrastructural needs that had to be addressed. Now his company could deal with it. What about several other companies which say, why should we invest in this when we have another gender to do the same role in maybe a lesser cost? What would be your answers to that question? It's important because you never know. There could be future leaders who would be listening to this in today's platform and they need to hear that answer now. So quickly, Nandini and Rekha, both of you. Rekha first, sorry.
Yeah, I have had experiences in, I think, both sides where I have interviewed for an organization based in India. And I just married at the time. And one of the first questions before they even looked at my resume is, okay, I heard that, you just married for about a year. What are your plans to expand your family? I was shocked out of my wits. And, I didn't even want to continue with that interview any further, but I was too young to even, make that effort and just walk out of that room. And I never ended getting the job anyway. Working in a company like Ernst & Young, where the approach has been completely different. And, to the extent that when I joined the Global Delivery Service, it was the time that we just set up the organization. And I was one of the first people to actually go on a maternity leave. And my first reaction and instinct was, I don't have a family support system in Bangalore and I would have to quit. So I was not allowed an option to quit. I was reporting into a lady partner there, and she just refused to take in my resignation, said, we'll give it as much time as you want, and you come back when you're ready. So I think this was in 2003, 2004 that I'm talking about, where, we didn't have a rule that even gave, so many months of maternity leave to women. So from there, then I was given an opportunity to work from home. A lot of 6-7 years I have done that at a time again when this was unheard of. So I think that I completely agree with Vijay that it depends on the organizations that you're working with. If it's a truly multinational organization, you get a lot of these opportunities. But otherwise, it becomes extremely difficult. The value in retaining a woman is in bringing in that diverse perspective that only a woman can bring. I think that diversity in that workforce is absolutely critical. There are enough studies out there which shows how women add to the having women lead an organization adds to the overall bottom line of an organization. So I think that's where when a woman leaves and you have to hire a man, the cost of bringing that person up to the same level, it does take, there is a learning curve involved, there is a cost involved. And if you compare it to the cost of retaining a woman, and I don't know what cost we're really talking about in this era where women can easily work from home, there are enough technology infrastructure that facilitates that. I'm not even sure there is real argument in not making an effort to retain a woman.
All right, that's quite blunt. Nandini, if you could just share quickly.
Yes, so a lot of conversations because it's sweat and toil. You have the patriarchal mindset, then you have the policies and the legislations of the land, which at times becomes a strict barrier. Say for the example, the 26 weeks of extension of maternity. Then in Karnataka, we had women's safety policy that required to be done because women were expected to reach back home from workplace at a certain time. So a lot of things happened. What we did is we tried and consciously and intentionally drove D&I to be part of the business strategy, because we said talent is owned by business and career is owned by talent. So we tried to position D&I as something driven by business, owned by business, and accountable for by the business leaders. We seeded that as part of their performance conversation, and the bonus was also linked to it. So we measured every aspect in terms of attracting, developing, and retaining women talent. And we also ensured that we are having enough conversation with the critical mass, which is the women in the workforce, which primarily at the front line, we see many, but as we go up the ladder, we see a little less. So we had curated programs to ensure we are psychologically cushioning them, emotionally cushioning them, to take up those challenges to which they had earlier said no. Because it's all about carpe diem, seize the opportunity.
Right.
Neha, can I add one point here? I'm so sorry. Yes, I'm really passionate about this. The business case for diversity, I think there's enough. You can do a Google and you'll get enough business case. But I think one important point that anybody running a company should remember is that the buying decisions are being taken more and more by women. So if you don't have that representation in your company, you are going to lose out.
And if I can,
yeah, Vijay, go ahead, please.
No, if I can just extend that a little bit, for an FMCG company, half our consumers, if not more, are women. And if you don't have women making decisions on brand building, how on earth are you going to resonate with these consumers? So, enough said. There is no question in my mind that gender diversity is absolutely a must if companies need to succeed.
Right. Madhvi, let me just come to you. So Rekha was mentioning about how in one of the organizations, she was not even given the option of quitting when she wanted to quit because she did not have an ecosystem of support. Now, that's the boss we all would love to have. And hopefully we all will get more of that. But my question to you, Madhvi, is even today, the onus for a woman to continue in her career to the top is on the woman, largely. How should women and organizations deal with this? I'm coming to this now because we're towards the end of this discussion. And what is it that, for the mindsets to change, we all have been having discussions. It's going to take whatever time it takes for mindsets to change. It's not an immediate solution to that. But where does the organization step in and say, it's not the role of the woman alone to be a caregiver and to look at X, Y, Z things that need to run in the house? Please.
So I can share with you what we are doing in Deutsche Bank over the last many years is that one, this whole bit of maternity leave and all, we have kind of taken it out of the equation. So for example, when I had my son, and I remember again, many, many years ago, my boss, actually, wonderful guy, he told me, he said, oh, you were away for 3 months and you took 3 months leave without pay. So I have to, decrease your bonus. I have to stop your increment and all that. We've done away with that. We said, anybody who goes on maternity leave, we're not going to reduce their bonus or reduce their increment. People get promoted when they're on maternity leave. So while they're on maternity leave, people get promoted. So the whole thing is that we just sort of cut that whole piece of, women leaving after that, after they have a child because they feel not being treated fairly. The second thing we've done is that we've told women that if they want to take a break, they can take a sabbatical. We have daycare centers where women can bring their children. So there's a lot of support systems you need to build during various times in, a woman's career that helps her tide over those, those sort of difficult times, really.
No, let me just clarify this thing. And I know what you mean to say, but just for people who are listening to it, when you say women are getting promoted even when they are in their pregnancy leave or maternity leave, on what basis?
On merit. Everything is on merit. See, again, and that is one of my big concerns. When a woman gets promoted, everybody asks that question, is it diversity or it's merit? When a man gets promoted, nobody asks the question. Obviously, all these promotions are subject to merit. What I meant was, if the person had not gone on maternity leave and continued, and the person would have got
That's
promoted,
right.
that is not held back.
Excellent, excellent. Vijay, we have maternity leave, we don't have paternity leave. So where does a man get to share the load of, handling kids at home in the brim of your career? Like, I think it was Imran who was talking about the reverse cycle of career clock versus biological clock. Where's paternity leave, or is that like a outright not required thing in the corporate mind because you all are in the leadership positions?
So thank you for asking that question, right? For two reasons. One is I went through this myself. When our daughter was born, because we didn't have a support system in Goa when I was working in Goa at that time, she was born back in Kerala, where both of us, my wife and I, grew up, right? I used to drive from Goa to Tellicherry, north of Kerala, where my wife's home is, every Friday, and come back on Monday afternoon back to Goa, just so that I could be with her when she actually needed me the most, right? Not because I wanted to do something physical, but just the mental and emotional support. And I was told that I'm setting a bad example by not turning up Monday morning at work, when I knew very well that none of the work that I was supposed to do was suffering. Why? Paternity leave was not a thing at that time. This is way back in 2000. Things have changed today, thankfully, but I have to tell you, even today, when I say that one of my passions is cooking, and the most enjoyable time that I spend is with my wife in the kitchen, there are still eyebrows raised and say, wow. My question is, why the wow? And my question to people of my gender is, think for yourself, are you putting in the 50% that you should be putting in the household chores, if not more, right? Don't think of this as a favor you're doing. Think of this as this is what you should be doing, because that's what you signed up for. Getting to that mindset, I think, is going to take quite some time. My hope is, of the 200 people who are listening, the male and the younger males would actually take this to heart and make this a part of normal life.
Absolutely. Rekha, what are the, in the recent past for your organization, or whatever, among the best practices in the industry, what is the game changer strategy that you really saw women hook onto, which women workers around you said, oh, wow, this is something that is helping us in our journey? Anything that comes to your mind about that?
I think, again, looking back at the organization that I'm a part of and some of the measures that we have taken, last year we had a training which was focused on only women, and this was to prepare them for the leadership roles. The advantage of having a woman-only training program is, it gives them a safe space to be really open about the challenges that they are all facing. And it's also surprising to see how common some of those challenges are. That also helps the organization to formulate or reformulate some of the strategies based on that. So after seeing the success of that particular program, now we're taking it forward, and we kind of making it like a norm. And I know it's been in place already in many organizations, but at least from my personal experience, this was a big game changer for us.
Nandini or Madhvi, whoever wants to go in, when organizations are looking at women getting higher up the pyramid, you still have to deal with very, very tacky things. For example, too assertive, too bossy, looks, sly comments, women saying that, they are at the disadvantageous position because they don't do post-work socializing. Are these real challenges in organizations, and what do organizations really need to do to tackle them?
So I'll jump in here. What we've done is we've gone ahead and had certain level of interventions which are focused only for people managers. And we did a dipstick to understand that people managers, specifically if they are of the female gender, are a little tougher than the men. And this came out because, having crucial conversations, the male people managers are a little scared of having those because they fear that their, female direct reports would break down and have an emotional outbreak. So they are fearful of that, and there is ethics complaint attached to it. So they're fearful. Whereas the female managers are a little, I would say, stronger when it comes to having those crucial conversations and all those things. So we tried and tackled that through having a systematic intervention of people managers on unconscious bias at all levels, dealing with gender and in specific intersections of gender. That is one. We had prevention of sexual harassment training only for the male counterparts at work. We had gender at work sensitization program only for male counterparts at work, because for the female, we have the business resource group, which tackles to hear all those issues. And we have an ear and eyes to the ground. So it was focused interventions that continues at frequent intervals.
Vijay, you were mentioning an incident in relation to this. Vijay and Madhvi, maybe, this is also a very important aspect of women in hierarchical positions. If you're not that high up, and if you're somewhere at the base of the pyramid or mid-level managerial positions, when do you decide that enough is enough and you need to speak up now? Whether it be in terms of emotional, sexual, or work-related, any kind of harassment, when is it that you need to start speaking up? Or what do organizations do for women not to think that, oh, this could be the end of my career? That's also a very, very real threat that women have in their minds.
I can only speak from my experience, right? And my experience has been, I've seen two examples where women and entry level, one woman at an entry level role in Procter & Gamble, she spoke up about not being comfortable in the way she's been treated by a manager. And within a week, the manager was fired after an inquiry was done, right? There's another example where, again, same result, the manager was fired based on the inquiry outcome, right? To my mind, that's how companies should be. And in my experience, I know of enough and more of companies who take this extremely seriously. It's not even a question that comes to mind whether women should speak up or not. In fact, it's shameful for the companies if they come across instances of women not speaking up. Is that the norm? I am under no illusions that it is. So I can speak only from my experience. I'm hoping again that going forward, when people who are listening to this conversation reach positions of power and decision making, they take it upon themselves that that is the culture of the companies that they ought to build.
Absolutely. Perhaps, when you talk about culture of companies, that's so critical because that's also a legacy which gets carried on and built on, and it just needs to be worked on constantly. I was talking to a very senior level professional, a woman I totally admire. I've known her for a long time, and I was quite taken aback with what she said, that with all her years of experience and flying all around and doing the kind of work that she's doing, she has not seen one chief technical officer, one CTO who's a woman. And this is a woman who's very senior in the hierarchy with the organization that she's working. And I'm like, wow, so you could literally be the first CTO whom you see in your lifetime. So that's literally what we're talking about, Madhvi. Let's just quickly start wrapping up. So I think it's already 6 o'clock. Please shoot in questions if you have, and I think Shalini will be looking at them also. Madhvi, what's that one thing you want people to take away? You have people from management levels here, you have people from entry level, you have students, all of them here. One from the organizational perspective and one from the entry for professional perspective. Two things that you want people to take away as they leave.
I would just say that this whole bit about inclusion, of gender, I think is something that all of us have to work together to address. It can't be just the organization, just the woman, or just it has to be handled. I've said this many times, multi-pronged approach to this. Society, families, individuals, organizations, and all of us can make a difference.
Nandini?
Have as much conversation as possible, because that's the only way to break the stereotypes and the mindset challenges. So conversation at every layer and tiers of the society, including organization.
Rekha?
I would say bring in inclusion as a measurable target, the same you would put, the same importance you give to a revenue goal or any other goal.
That's right. Vijay?
I think I would love to see a situation where if a woman manager quits, there is a lot of tough questions asked to the immediate manager to make sure that the culture is not what got in the way the woman's perceived career opportunities is not what got in the way. Said in other words, make it absolutely critical for the male managers to nurture a woman's career.
All right. I guess we'll just end it at this. Extremely insightful conversations. We all don't have all the answers. Someone was saying something, sorry?
Sorry, Sneha, we have a few questions, but why don't you wrap up and we'll start taking some of those questions, yeah?
I think the biggest takeaway that all of us can really take from all these very strong insights is that it's just an ongoing process, and we must not shy away from engaging in these processes at our homes, in the organizations, and at a very individual level as well, more aggressively, if not. Thank you so much for listening to us. Shalini, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sneha. So we've got a few questions that have come in from the audience. In no particular order, I'm going to start taking a few of them. So I think the first one that came up fairly early in the kind of discussion was this whole concept of the glass ceiling. Who actually put it up over there? Is it in our minds? And I'm speaking of our gender when I say that. So is it in our minds, or is it a self-created hindrance, a self-evolved hindrance? Any thoughts, Madhavi?
I think it's been built up over the years. Like I said, it's just happened that whenever promotions happened, men got promoted over women, and that's how it got built. I mean, but I think, yeah, I think I'll take what Nandini said. It's not a bulletproof glass ceiling, so it's broken many times. So yeah.
Anybody else would like to add to that? Okay. So I think the next question was a little, Sneha, you had explored it a little bit, which is all about, some of the privileges. I think the question really reads as, while everyone complains of a glass ceiling, is it not true that many women want privileges of being a woman? Is there a dichotomy there? And I think, Gitu answered that in some sentence, which says that the statement holds true only because women are conditioned in a certain way. The privileges that exist are not really privileges. If you think about it, it is just a result of years of social conditioning that stems from patriarchy. There are many privileges for men too, and Gitu's put a relevant comment out there. But I think the whole question really around the mind is, are we here? Are we claiming privileges and therefore, asking for special kind of, treatments at the workplace? I don't know, Nandini, would you like to go with that?
So it would be mindset primarily, mindset of the individual, mindset of the organization, because there are certain trends that are assessed, which gives us a feeling of certain things which are in the environment. So we cannot overlook either. At the same time, I wouldn't say women take privilege of this. If we do not have a critical mass in every layer of the organization, we wouldn't see enough of them in the leadership position. And that's primarily the story of most of the organizations across industries. So building that critical mass, looking for less of buy and more of build, which we organizations don't do enough, that would be a critical aspect to look into.
Now, the only point I wanted to add.
Sorry?
The only point I wanted to add, sorry, quickly. The only point I wanted to add was this whole question of privilege doesn't make too much sense to me, because are we saying that women should act more like men to succeed? No. Right? The whole point of gender diversity is good for business. And therefore, we want women to bring their perspective in it. And that can really happen if they continue to behave, act, think like women do. So there's no question of privilege. That is who they are. Right? So I don't think we should even think about this in terms of privilege. It is gender diversity is good for business. And that diversity comes only when women continue to be who they are in every sense of the word.
Very well said, Vijay. And I think the next
Shalini,
question.
if I may just add to this, and I know I'm just a moderator, but I just want to make this point. A very senior person from the media industry had called me once and asked me if they could help me, if I could help them find a reporter in Kerala. And I was like, okay, what are you looking at? And the first thing that this person told me was preferably not a woman. And I was like, why? Oh, because costs go up. When you go out, you have to have 2 rooms, one for the camera person and one for the reporter and all of that. I, of course, never got back to this person. And but if this is what you see as privilege, then you're not seeing the counter side to it. That is the perspective that comes from hiring a particular gender on the ground. The kind of walls that are broken just by hiring a woman. And I'm not in any way undermining a man. We both bring in different perspectives, but because we're biologically different, you don't get to hire a man other than a woman. I thought I would share with you, Shalini.
Thank you, Sneha. Vijay, I think the next question was something that you've already put in a text answer for, which is, do multinationals therefore have a better and more conducive kind of atmosphere for women to succeed in? I think, yes, the panel happens to have a lot of multinational, but I think, Vijay, you've already put in an answer, so maybe for the benefit of the audience, you could kind of expand on that.
I guess the only point I was making was it's still not the norm, right? It's sadly true that the question put forward was more in terms of why don't we have more women heading companies like TCS or Infosys, right? The point is it's still not the norm. And that's what we're talking about. And it's not going to change overnight. Everything that we need, if we take away nothing from this conversation, the one thing we should take away is what do we do collectively, men and women, today, so that the numbers in terms of percentages of women CEOs, etc., get to a more parity level to the normal population diversity in a couple of generations at least. So nobody here, I think, is suggesting that the glass ceiling doesn't exist. Unfortunately, it does. And the point being, we've got examples of how women are successful. We've also heard through the conversation of some of the things that we can do to make sure this success keeps building on itself. And this topic is no longer a topic of conversation, probably a couple of generations from now.
Yeah, thank you, Vijay. I'll just take one last question, which is about, maybe Rekha can address that if anybody else wants to add to it. Given the fact that we've got ladies also in the audience, are there any tips that you would have for women in the audience who want to make it successful in their corporate career? Any couple of things? I think Madhavi alluded to a couple, but you could probably kind of encapsulate 1 or 2 items that we could leave the team with.
Sure. I would say if you're facing unfairness or injustice at your workplace, speak up. Do not assume this is the way it works in this particular organization and look for another organization to jump out. Speak up. That itself, demonstrates your leadership skills. The second part of it is, I think women are our own worst critics, very harsh critics. You don't need somebody else to point out your mistakes. You'll be the first person to say, these are the 10 things I cannot do. Learn to sell yourself better, push yourself forward, and be more conscious when these negative thoughts come into your mind.
Thank you, Rekha. I think that was pretty appropriate and well said. So I think we've got a couple more, but in the interest of time, we're at about 6:11. Madhav, do I hand it back to you?
Yeah, thank you, Shalini. Wonderful deliberation. And I mean, all of us may feel that we all knew this, but then when we are reminded of all these facts and points which we are highlighting, I think it takes some time, as one of our speakers very rightly said, it takes some time, but then we can expedite that decision making and the change which has happened with these kind of deliberations, these kind of discussions when we highlight such issues. I'm sure it'll land up in the right ears. I mean, as Vijay rightly said, 200 people listening to it, more people will also listen to it in due course, and the speeding up of that action can happen. Let's hear it from Shalini James, the member of the Women's Forum, to sum up the deliberations, just the highlights of what all are learned seasoned warriors who are talking here on this particular topic. Shalini, over to you.
Thank you, Madhav. Good evening, everyone. That was a power-packed session indeed, and I have been given the tough task of capturing the distilled wisdom of this day and putting it into a capsule. When the topic was selected, the glass ceiling for women leaders, myth or reality, some of us had secretly hoped for divergent views on this panel for the sake of a debate. But that was not to be. There was unanimous agreement among the panelists right at the start. The takeaways today are very clear. Attitudes needed to be mended. Sometimes, as Rekha mentioned, it is changing self-limiting beliefs that women themselves hold, and sometimes it is changing the expectations placed on her by society, as Vijay said. So is the glass ceiling an indestructible barrier? Definitely not. As Nandini said, it is not bulletproof enough that it cannot be shattered. Maybe then there is a possibility to course correct, as Vijay said earlier on. Madhavi said that everyone has a part to play. In some cases, organizations need to do something about it. In others, the women themselves needed to do something. She also said that global phenomena like the pandemic impacts women more. It is also heartening to note that changes are also in place. Conversations are in place in many organizations about gender diversity. And much is being done to make critical changes. Gender diversity is good for business, as Vijay said. And I must say, Nandini made an interesting point in saying that in order to create a level playing field, we need to start young. She also said something very interesting: equity is key, not equality. Sneha did a wonderful job asking the right questions, punctuating the discussions with her own pertinent views. And we had some great questions from the audience, which were answered adeptly by our panelists. All in all, I must say it was a truly enriching session that provided much food for thought. The deeply insightful message delivered by this panel will stay with us long after this day is gone. The problem of the glass ceiling needs to be addressed by each one of us, as our panelists said, with our own methods and maybe at our own pace. But addressed it must be. So I conclude my summary of this truly scintillating discussion by saying that until the last vestiges of the glass ceiling are dismantled, we, ladies and gentlemen, have a job to do. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shalini James. That was wonderful, encapsulating the salient points which were mentioned by all the speakers and the moderator, and of course, Shalini Warrior too. And wonderful way of summing it up. Thank you so much, and congratulations once again to our managing committee member, Shalini Warrior, for putting together this team to deliberate on this topic. as rightly said, it's highlighting the need of the generation or the times, and you've done it so well. Before handing over to our Honorary Secretary, Mr. Jomon George, for the vote of thanks, let me just remind all of you that we have 3 more programs already lined up for this month. We have another leader talk session coming up next on 15th. That's 5 days from now, 15th of December. Mr. Vinod Chandran, Director of Logic Bangalore, will talk on a topic of interest, which will be disruptions in management education. On 20th of December, we also have a StartCon, the startup conversation, the panel discussion being scheduled. We have 2 of the prominent startup ventures, X-Travel Money, an online forex aggregator who won the KMA award earlier. And sharing the panel with them will be the Government of India award-winning online conferencing solution, which became a talk of the town, vConsole, from our own Chertala. This conversation will be moderated by our program committee chair, Mr. S.R. Nair. And we have one more leader talk session coming up this month itself from Dr. Sandeep Krishnan, Director, People Business at Bangalore and Adjunct Professor at IIM Indore. He'll be talking to us on 29th of December. So these are the programs which are lined up already. There are a couple of more programs which are already in the pipeline. It may happen this month again. So please keep watching our notices and notifications and be there like what you did today in large numbers, and get enriched and enlightened with all these talks and all these pearls of wisdom shared by our speakers. Over to our Honorary Secretary, Mr. Jomon K. George, for the formal vote of thanks. Jomon.
Yes. President of KMA, Madhu Chandran, the Women Manager Forum Chair, Madam Shalini Warrior, the moderator Sneha, other expert panelists, the audience who are on screen with us. Good evening to all of you. I'm extremely happy to propose a formal vote of thanks for this first ever program of the Women Manager Forum, so meticulously conceived and so well executed under the able leadership of Madam Shalini Warrior. Normally, the vote of thanks, we express gratitude to people in-house at the end, but today for a change, I thought I'd go in the reverse order. First, I would like to thank the dynamic president for bringing a fresh perspective to KMA in the year 2021, where I'm fortunate to serve as a secretary, and lining up a brilliant team and requesting Madam Shalini to take up the chair of the Women Managers Forum. And that made a big change in the first ever program, which is taken off so very well. So my compliments to Madhav for this. And I was not surprised to see Sujata Madhav, First Lady, logged in from start to end to check what my man is doing with all these charming ladies around. And Madam Shalini Vaira, I'm proud and happy that we belong to the same tribe of chartered accountants. And she has been very supportive of our activities, and extremely proud and happy the way you have conducted. And I think it was Madhavi who started off quoting you as a girl with a lot of gray hair. And it is a lot of wisdom. It is your experience and lining up all these speakers, and one odd man out, not odd man out, odd man in. Bijay from Chicago. I would ask Bijay what's for breakfast, because he didn't burn the midnight oil. He burned the early morning oil, and he said he's spending a lot of time in the kitchen. So a big thank you to you, Madam Shalini Warrior, from your schedule. I know what we all know what banking industry is going through at this point of time, the governmental pressures, all those things. And so nice to have brought all these brilliant speakers, and Sneha as a moderator who brought a lot of NDTV vibes, the Pranay Roy kind of vibes to the whole scene. And it's really nice to see the coordination seamlessly done. And thank you so much, Sneha, for that special vibe that you brought in. And of course, Rekha EY, the strategist, she said a lot of issues around, but go forward, irrespective of all that, issues are there, but then that's not really matter as long as you have aspirational thoughts in your mind, and all that is fine. So that brought really nice. And Madhavi, of course, the HR perspective was really different, where we say that, people, the gender difference. And before I say anything, it's really nice that it's only a glass ceiling. Somebody said bulletproof. It's not a concrete ceiling. It's not a wooden ceiling. The best thing about the glass ceiling is you can see through the blue sky and aspire to shoot up, and also that you can break the glass and go for. I was going off and on the screen, probably you would have noticed, because I was attending a program, the Regional Conference of Chartered Accountants, which the chief guest was Madam Nirmala Sitharaman, who has broken the glass ceiling more than once. So we have live examples around. So that was really nice. So that was about Rega and Madhavi. And Nandini, as expected, went on a slightly different target. And that reminded me of the book written by Raghuram Rajan, which is named as I Do What I Do. So that was that was a different perspective altogether, Nandini. And that brought in a lot of new thoughts into our mind. And Bijay, thank you so much. And you're saying that the gender doesn't make a difference. And happy that you're spending a lot of time in the kitchen. And the best times you have with your partner is in the kitchen. That's really nice. So please relax now. Have a nice breakfast. We are gearing up for dinner here. So thank you so much. And you allow for Kerala, Talasheri, and I hope you love the Talasheri food also. So next time you come to Kerala, please do come to KMA. We would, by that time, the vaccine is already ready for. So we would probably have you for a physical meeting, a lot of pleasant interaction. All the speakers for that matter, because Vijay has a special Kerala connect driving down all the way from Goa down. So you went ahead of Virat Kohli to take a paternity leave and take care of the expectant mother. That was really nice of you. Proud father. My daughter was also attending this program. So she's on her early stages of her career ladder. So I'm sure that she's also benefited by the inputs they given. And Shalini James was part of our managing committee last year. She was so silent. She was so composed. Today we saw completely different version of Shalini. It's not just in fashion designing. It's not in creating the latest trends and fashions. It's that she could recap all the things so brilliantly in a short span of time. And I agree with all the speakers and more with Sneha that we required more time. But then the time frames we keep generally for 1 hour. So thank you so much, everyone. And I think I've thanked everyone. And one more big thank you to Shalini ma'am for all his support. And we're looking forward to such good programs. We'll work together. We'll engage more of the empowered women who would bring the all-in-one perspective to women around. And I think I've thanked everyone and a lot of relevant chats and questions, which meant that the audience were glued on to what was being discussed, which is a very important point. So keep breaking the glass ceiling. It is only a glass ceiling which can be broken. Keep looking up into the sky. Let's work together. For me, I don't understand what gender inequality is. So always work together. Always enjoy the endearing elegance of female companionship, and we are partners around. So thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful evening. Stay safe. At the same time, as President said, stay tuned to the upcoming programs of KMA. God bless every one of you. That's it.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
And I'd just like to add a thank you to Prajit, who's done a lot of work from the KMA Secretariat. And my secretary, Reshma. Reshma is not here, but my secretary, Reshma, did a lot of running around. So thank you to both of them also. And thanks very much to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Stay safe, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
One more thing.
So much.
Before we adjourn, we have said here a very, very good vote of thanks proposed by our secretary. But we have something as a token of gratitude to our speakers, the panelists, and the moderator. This is it. It's a very, very specially curated memento, which will be
so sweet.
It's as of now the proof of being here. And really thankful to Jomon also for making that wonderful vote of thanks, even though he had big boss ma'am Nirmala Sitharaman there. I'm sure he was here because he was actually, covering all the points discussed by all our speakers. So thank you, Jomon, for that. And once again, a big thanks to each one of you for making this so lively, enriching, and enlightening. Thank you. Good night. Stay safe. And meeting is adjourned.